So what I want to talk to you about today is your estimate presentations. And the reason I want to focus on this is because what I see happening all the time with builders and trades is they often send a quote or an estimate to a client, and this could be for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds even, and all they're sending is the breakdown of the quote. And worst case scenario, it might be a lump sum that's sent with a bit of a description of the work they're going to do. In better cases, you see an itemized breakdown. But really, all they're sending are figures over to a client. And there may be a small covering letter, if the client's lucky, that goes with it. And this is absolutely crazy, because if that's all you're sending over to a client, then how is a client going to judge whether you're the right company for them or not? What it's going to come down to, if they've got your quote that's sent to them and another 2 or 3 that are exactly like that, all it's going to come down to is who is the cheapest quote. And believe me, you do not want to be winning work because you're the cheapest quote. That's a race to the bottom and the worst position you want to be in. So what we want to do is we want clients to make decisions based on emotion and because we've tackled their real psychological needs. It's not all about the price. We don't all make decisions based on price. We make it because of plenty of other things. I've given an illustration before. I've got an iPhone. Now, I don't buy this iPhone because it's the cheapest phone on the market. I buy this iPhone because I see value in it. I perceive value in what this iPhone gives me. And it's not about price. And generally speaking, we don't always buy on price unless we can't perceive any other value in the process. So today what we're going to do in this is just look at your presentation and how you can really maximize it so that the client's judging you based on value rather than price. And there's 3 things that have to happen when you're presenting to a client. We're not just talking about presenting verbally, we're talking about the estimate presentation that goes over. So the big 3 things that have got to happen in any presentation, if you want to be able to win a client, is this. So the first thing we want to show your client is your ability. That's really important. Clients need to know that you've got the ability to deliver their £100,000 or £500,000 job. So how do you show that you've got the ability to be able to do this work? Well, the only way you can show your ability is by doing things like case studies and showing previous work that you've carried out. If you can include this in your presentation, the client will automatically look at that and think, yeah, this builder or this tradesperson has clearly got the ability to be able to deliver a similar project because they've clearly shown me that on their case study. So that's number 1. We've got to show the client that we have the ability to carry out the work, and that's got to be demonstrated. They can't just take our word for it. The second thing we've got to do in our presentation is show a client that we have credibility. And the way we show a client we have credibility is things like if we have any awards, that's really powerful, or maybe we have some accreditations with some bodies like Federation of Master Builders or Construction Line or other accreditations, whatever's local to you. So they show a client that you have credibility as a company. You're a professional and serious company. The last thing that you've got to have is likability. The client must like you as a company. I don't even know if I've spelled that right, but so how do we show a client that we have likability? Well, this will be things like reviews and testimonials. When a client sees this and they see that you're a good person and you've got their best interests at heart, then that's demonstrated by reviews and testimonials. And we all buy on these. These are probably the most powerful thing that we buy on. So in practice then, we know what we need to do, but in practice, how does that look on an actual presentation? Well, I just want to show you 2 examples of presentations that have done this really well. And you'll look out for these 3 elements throughout this presentation. So the first thing we said with a brochure that we're sending over or a presentation that we send over, we're not going to focus on the bit that you're putting at the beginning. There's some really good things in here that I'm not going to talk about at the moment, like their USP and their process and things like that. But you'll notice straight away we wanted to demonstrate the ability of this builder. Well, here we are. We have a case study here, and what this shows us is what ability this builder has. So ideally, you would want a few case studies or mix and match the case studies if you can. You could drop in certain case studies. If you're looking at a loft conversion for someone, you might want to drop in a loft conversion case study, or vice versa, depending on whatever your trade is. The second thing we wanted to do was show likability. So how do we show that? We said testimonials and reviews. Well, here clearly we've got some nice reviews on here, and that's really useful. You could have maybe even 2 pages of reviews if you had that. And the last thing we were looking for on this was credibility. And remember the way we said to do that? You show them that by awards, or you can show that by accreditation. And here we've got some awards, Best of House awards, and some accreditations with Federation of Master Builders and other things like that. So this is a great example of someone who shows these 3 elements in a presentation. So that's great, but it needs to go a little bit further than that. The next thing we want to do is make sure that we're actually sending a detailed quote to the client. There's nothing more frustrating for a client to see a really basic quote that looks like it's been done on the back of a fag packet. So let me just show you an example of how your quotes should be going over as a minimum. And what you'll see here is that obviously it's going to vary depending on what the project is, but you're going to see like a phase breakdown, and then it will go into real detail on how these phases are broken out. So full transparency to a client. So that's the type of project detail and level that you really need to be going into when you're sending this presentation. So you would have your presentation at the beginning, and then you'd have your quote breakdown underneath that. And what this then allows the client to do is they're then judging you not just on the price. Before they even get to your price, they've had to look at all the other things there, which is addressing their psychological needs. And if you want to go one step further than that, the other thing you could then do in your presentation is when you're interviewing your client, when you first go around there and you're talking to them, you can uncover what their actual needs are. So if a client says, I'm really worried about you finishing on time, and I'm worried about you finishing on budget, I'm worried about the quality, whatever it is that the client's concerns are, note those things down. And then in an ideal presentation, you will then address those points for the client. So maybe your USP, part of your USP is that you do finish on time and you have a unique process on how you finish on time. Well, add that into your presentation. So when the client looks at your presentation and they have that concern, top of their mind is that I need a company that's going to finish on time, you have a clear USP there on how you do that. So we can go into much more detail about how you demonstrate a really top presentation, but just applying those 3 points if you can. Show that you've got the ability, show your credibility, and show your likability. And the 4th point is try and address the client's concerns. And then the 5th point that we mentioned, make sure you have a nice transparent quotation too that goes over in the presentation. That's going to be so much better than just sending a lump sum to a client with a silly cover letter that goes at the beginning. Remember, we want the clients to perceive value in you. And this is your way to do it. This is your way to demonstrate that value to your client. So I hope that helps a little bit. But if you want to know more about the things we can do to improve your conversion rates, then reach out to us, because we've got lots of tactics and tricks up our sleeve to show you exactly how you can improve your conversion rate and scale your business successfully.